Are your ad campaigns lighting up the dashboard, but not the pipeline? That's bullspend, and marketers are calling it out in Dashboard Confessions.
My boss asked for results, so I opened my dashboard for the only positive-sounding metric I had: impressions.
Cut the bull spend. See revenue, not just reach. LinkedIn delivers the highest return on ad spend of major ad networks. Advertise on LinkedIn. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a $250 credit. Go to linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
You said this place was steps from the water.
We just haven't found the steps yet.
How much did we save?
Enough.
Enough to get lost?
Or you could book a stay with Hilton.
Welcome to your oceanfront room, just steps from the water.
The Hilton sale is on now. Book on Hilton.com or the Hilton app and save up to 20% to get the stay you expected. When you want savings, not surprises, it matters where you stay. Hilton, for the stay.
My name is Ryan Pak, and this is Soundtrack Your Life, where we speak with a guest about a soundtrack that is important to them. Today, our guest is composer and Emmy-winning music editor Micha Liberman. Welcome, Micha.
Glad to be here.
So, Micha, I guess the first thing I'd like to ask you is, what does a music editor do?
It's a very good question. I've spent many years trying to sort of come up with a metaphor that explains it to people, and here's the best one I can come up with. Like, imagine that every scene in a movie or a TV show is like a room, and the director's job is to decorate this room exactly how he wants it decorated. And there's a particular hole in the wall, and it's a very oddly shaped, funny hole in the wall, and he hires a cabinet maker to make a custom cabinet that fits exactly in the hole and has all of the design features that make it fit into the room. In this metaphor, that cabinet maker is the composer or the music supervisor, whose job it is to provide a piece of music for this scene. If it's original music for the show, it's written by the composer. If it's a pre-existing song from a soundtrack or a song that's being recorded and by an artist specifically for the project, that's gone through the music supervisor. Both of them give the music to me, and I'm the installer. So in a perfect world, I stick the cabinet in the back of my truck, I drive to the job site, I slide it into the hole, I say, thank you, everybody, and I go home. But that's never what happens. What happens is you show up, and now the hole's bigger, or now the hole's smaller, or you slide it in, and the director goes, oh, the scroll work up there, can we put some of that down there? And I actually wanted 3 drawers, not 2. And now I, as the music editor, the sort of last line of musical defense, have already recorded music, already written, already recorded and done, and now I have to digitally manipulate that music to fit the scene, to work now. So I have the same job that the composer has, which is make this piece of music fit the scene, make this cabinet exactly what I want in this room. But I'm already on the job site, and I have half the tools that the composer has. I can't rewrite a moment. If the moment's not scary enough, I can't just say, oh, let me write it and make it scarier. I have to say, oh, well, let's take the horns from this section and add them over here and take the drums from this other cue and stack them on top, and I'll pitch bend that thing down an octave, and I will use whatever tools I have to accomplish the emotional goal that the director or the producer or the filmmaker is trying to achieve in this moment. But it's too late to write a new piece of music, essentially. That is ultimately the music editor's job. But right up until we get to that point where we're doing installation, it's my job to sort of guide the whole music department, to manage all of the different pieces, to make sure that we know exactly what piece of music is going where and why and when and how it's getting created and who's responsible for what. And so it's full-time like logistics manager, full-time musician, and full-time audio engineer, like all crammed into one job.
Yeah, and in your bio, it says that you kind of have both like a technical hat and like a creative musician's hat. And I guess that plays into what you have to do.
Yeah. So I've been lucky enough over the last few years to open a company called Mind Meld Arts, which, I don't know, fourth biggest music editing company in Hollywood. We have, when our roster is full, we have about 8 music editors that work at Mindvalley Arts. And one of the patterns that I've noticed over the years of hiring multiple music editors is that everybody comes from one of two camps. They either are musicians who happen to be very good at audio engineering. You know, they're like the guy in the band who is always wiring everything, the guy who like totally understands the technical side of being a musician. Or they are audio engineers who like play music, right? So their training is in audio engineering, their degrees are in audio engineering, but most people who are interested in audio engineering have some kind of musical background. And so these are those audio engineers who are particularly musical who end up being music editors. I'm one of the only music editors I've ever met. I may be the only one I've ever met who actually studied both. I have an associate's degree in audio engineering and my undergraduate degree is in music. So the fact that I have training in both camps is kind of why I think I ended up at being a music editor, is that it is really a job that is 100% creative and 100% technical. So
yeah, and you've also done composing as well. So do you feel like because you have experience as a composer and as a music editor that you kind of have like this special hybrid experience where you're easier to work with because you can put yourself in the other person's shoes?
I do think that a lot of composers are happier to have a music editor on the stage who can solve musical problems with a compositional eye. I think that is a big reason why a lot of composers keep coming back to me, because, they can trust. I've scored a few films myself, and I've written a lot of music for various films and TV shows, and so that I think is part of the reason why I'm not hungry.
Sure.
So
speaking of your musical background, like when did you start playing music? What instrument was it? And just kind of walk me through that journey.
So I had a very unusual experience as a child with music. So in third grade, this is the only part that feels, I think, like a lot of people have a similar story. In third grade, we learned to play recorder. And in Mrs. K's music class, I went to private religious school, very small private religious school, from first grade until I graduated high school. And so Miss K had this rule, like if you could play a melody on the recorder that she hadn't taught us, then you'd get a little gold star in the back of your recorder book. And by the end of the year, she had to like staple extra papers to the back of my book because we'd run out of room for gold stars. Because at 8 years old, I could just think of a melody and play it on the recorder. I could figure it out in 2 seconds. And in a normal situation, I feel like a school would be like, oh, put this kid in band. But I didn't. I went to a school that had none of that. We had secular studies and religious studies. That was it. We had no extracurricular studies at all. So that moment was basically ignored by the adults in my life. And I was begging someone, please, can I learn music? And in 6th grade, my father was like, let's get you some private music lessons. What instrument do you want to learn? And the only thing I'd ever played was the recorder. So I said, I don't know, the flute. So I took flute lessons in 6th grade, 6th, 7th, maybe 8th grade. I took flute lessons. And then in 9th grade, I'm a 14-year-old boy. Meanwhile, in the background, I was teaching myself piano. I was teaching myself guitar. And in 9th grade, like a 15-year-old boy, I was like, flute's for girls. I need a more manly instrument. I want to play drums.
Okay.
So my dad bought me a drum set at a garage sale and started taking drum lessons. And when I went to college as a percussion major, but quickly realized that my brain laid more in the like theoretical composition side of music. So I ended up graduating as essentially a theory history major. So I studied music theory really intently in college and graduated college with this degree in music theory, a really, sort of deeper understanding of how music works than I was able to execute with my hands, because I didn't have the kind of experience playing with other musicians my whole life that most people get when they're a child. The first time I was in a band, the first time I ever played music with another person, I was like 16. I didn't have that experience of being in middle school band and then being in high school band and like playing with other musicians. And so I didn't, it took me a lot longer to like get good as a player than it does most people. Most people are in that situation as a musician where like your hands can do things that your brain doesn't quite understand. And I was in the opposite position where like I wished I could get my hands to just do this thing that I understood it intellectually, but like couldn't execute. And I think that's a part of the big reason why I ended up as an audio engineer on the technical side, because I could listen to the band and know musically what they needed and approach that, from an engineering perspective in a way that I think most audio engineers couldn't necessarily do. And so, I'm 52 years old now, so I've had a few decades of playing to catch up. And I don't think I'll ever catch up with the people who were great as children, but I finally reached a point as a player where I have some confidence as a player. But, it was not the normal musical journey where most people start on an instrument, learn it, get good, and then from there go, oh, how does this thing work?
Right. Well, very cool. I love learning about people's kind of journeys because everyone has a different journey. And
for sure, especially in Hollywood.
Oh, especially in Hollywood.
If you want to be a lawyer, you want to be a doctor, there's a path, right? You go to medical school, you get your internship and then your residency. You go to law school, you start as an associate and then you become a junior partner. There's a ladder to climb to success that almost everybody climbs to get to success. But there's no ladder in Hollywood, right? Like everybody's story is different. It's like, how did you get your job as a film composer? Oh, I was, in the bathroom at Starbucks and the guy in the stall next to me ran out of toilet paper and we struck up a conversation and he was making a short film and I ended up scoring it for him. And, 2 years later, he made a feature film and that was a big hit. And now I have a career. Everybody has that's a real person story, but I'm not going to say who. Everybody has some crazy story about how they ended up where they ended up, because there is no ladder to climb here.
Right. You gotta kind of make your own ladder.
Yeah, totally. And the secret is skip rungs.
Right.
Don't climb it. Jump up.
Or someone will knock you down, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is. People think Hollywood is made up of like the most talented, most impressive group of people, and while there are incredibly talented and impressive people here, I think the last study I said 97% of the people who move to Hollywood to make it end up going home. And Hollywood is made up of just the 3% of us who didn't go back home. It's just the 3% who stuck it out through the torture at the beginning that end up having, careers. At least that's true for behind the scenes of Hollywood. Like, it's not a talent test. It's like a grit test.
Sure. It's endurance.
Yeah, endurance.
So, you've done a lot of different sort of projects, different genres. You started with Deadwood. Now you're doing Only Murders in the Building, among other things. I know you're also doing the Avatar show that's on Netflix. Do you feel like your scope of work changes between like these different projects? Because, they're obviously calling for different sorts of cues, or some projects are more needle drop heavy, and
definitely. I mean, I'm doing a show right now that's going to come out shortly on a Disney Channel, Disney Plus show called Coven Academy. We're just wrapping up season 1 now, so I think it's coming out in September, and it's very song heavy. I think we just mixed an episode with 8 songs in across across like half an hour of material. There's 8 songs. In the same time, right now, we're wrapping up season 2 of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and yesterday I had playback for 2 different episodes, one of Coven Academy and one of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And as I said, that Coven Academy playback had 8 songs in it and also lots of score. And Avatar: The Last Airbender has nothing but essentially like once you add up everybody in the room, it's like a almost 200-piece orchestra and choir, no songs at all. Every single second of music written originally, recorded with full orchestra. We went to Vienna and Budapest to record the orchestra and the choir. We have soloists recorded all over the world because Avatar has a very like Asian vibe. So we have Asian soloists all over Asia who are recording for the show. So one show is composer doing a score here in his studio, recording, mixing everything himself, getting me a new score every week on top of tons of songs. And the other show is we spend a year and a half on every episode writing, rewriting, demoing, re-demoing, editing, changing, fixing. The picture changes, the visual effects change, everything is constantly changing. We're working on subtlety and nuance for, like I said, a year and a half. Then we go and record a huge orchestra. It's a completely different process than Coven Academy. And, I'm doing both of them at the same time. And they both have completely different needs and completely different, not only artistic approaches, but technical approaches to how we get the music done.
Sure. And even like on a show like Only Murders, where, like season 3 is got this fictional Broadway show musical that Pasek and Paul have written for the show. You're trying to balance, the show, which is, obviously very snappy dialogue driven, but you also don't want to hide like this gorgeous music that you've gotten these award-winning writers to write for you. How do you kind of wrap your head around all of that?
I mean, that was one of the most difficult and unique experiences of my life for a lot of reasons. The first is, as I said, my music department that I'm responsible for sort of wrangling is always the composer and his team and the music supervisor and their team. So Sid Khosla is the composer and Bruce Gilbert is the music supervisor, and their teams are the two teams that I'm dealing with all day, every day. And then all of a sudden we add a third team of Pasek and Paul, and they're in New York and they have their own team of people and their own workflow and their own processes. So now I have 3 music departments to manage as opposed to 2. And then, in a normal musical, the music comes up, the background sounds, which are like the sounds of the environment that you're in, which are, the birds and the wind and wherever you happen to be, those come down, the production music comes up, reality disappears, everyone starts singing and dancing, and the audience doesn't for any moment think that they're watching something real. At this point, we're in like magical musical land where everyone sings their lines, right? That's not what this was. This wasn't a musical. This was a show about people putting on a musical. So when they're on stage, it's not magical musical land, it's reality. You have to believe you're hearing those people singing on stage. We can't, enter this place where the music can sound perfectly produced. It has to sound perfectly performed. And that's a very different sound, and your ear knows the difference instantaneously. And I had honestly never been in that situation. Like I've done plenty of musicals like over the course of my career. I mean, plenty, but I'd never done a show about a musical as opposed to actually a musical. And so actually I did do a movie about a musical, but we didn't bother with that. As soon as we went musical, we just went musical, and that was incredibly challenging. And add to that there was this song, this Pickwick Triplets song, this Patter song, which was very fast dialogue shooting from Steve Martin. And my job is there's a thing we do in music called comping, which essentially means taking the best moments from different takes and putting them together to make a master take. So like a singer will sing a song 4 or 5 times and we'll say, okay, this line was better in the first take, this line was better in the second take, this line was better in the first take, then we'll go to the 4th take and we'll string all those together to make the best performance. But with this situation, Steve Martin is a very gifted musician, so every single take had something good in it, right? We had takes from pre-production, from before they shot. Then they recorded him on the set every time they did a take on the set. And we had all these very, I don't know how many takes. It was, 15, 20 takes of him doing this song. And now I have to comp it. But unlike every other song I've ever done in my career, John Hoffman, our brilliant showrunner on Only Murders in the Building, was like, wouldn't it be cool if we did like multiple split screen and we could see Steve singing every single word of the song? So now we have one master take of his face, and I have to squeeze every syllable into his lips. Every consonant has to land, and I'm not just going to use the one take that you're looking at. It took me about a month to put together this master take of Steve Martin where his lips landed perfectly, the energy in his voice equaled the energy in his face, and we gave you the absolute best version of him singing that song, which was not an easy thing to find, because it wasn't like normally you can go like, oh, that note's out of tune, or oh, that's bad, or it's like, these 4 are all great. Which one do I like better? Why? Which one, and that process was maybe the most difficult single piece of footage I ever had to do in my entire career. And it all paid off for me. That song was written by Pasek and Paul and co-written by Mark Shaman, and also a very accomplished film composer. And I bumped into them at the Emmys, and Mark told me that he had been telling people that he thought it was one take. And so if I fooled Mark, who is an absolute master at this, then I feel like I fooled everybody. So that to me was like, I feel like that's my calling. That's like, you want to see what I can do as a music editor? Watch the Pickwick Triplets scene. Like, that it was the most technically difficult thing I ever had to do.
Yeah, I watched that this morning and I thought it was one take.
It's not.
Yeah, I know there's...
I'm glad to hear I fooled you too.
Yeah, you did fool me, and it was great. I know you were nominated for an Emmy for it, so I wanted to make sure that I watched one of the episodes that you were nominated for just to kind of refresh my memory. And it's a very impressive episode in general, but that scene especially is definitely a highlight.
Well, I appreciate that. Yes, that was one of my many losses at the Emmys.
Well, you've also won. We as a soundtrack podcast, we always have to bring up the Oscars and Diane Warren and her record. At least you don't have to. You don't have like that trivia fact about you,
Yeah, no, and I'm nowhere near as accomplished as she is. I have 4 Emmy nominations and only the one win right here.
Hey, 1 is better than 0.
I guess that's true.
People don't think about that fact about you like they think about it with Diane,
The truth is, I like, the awards are nice, but I'd trade careers with her in a second.
Sure.
I'd have to trade talent with her first. So, unfortunately, that's not possible. So she's
Right.
her and I am me.
And you're both very good at what you do.
I appreciate that.
So speaking of soundtracks, what are some of your favorite soundtracks and scores?
It's a good question. I knew that you were going to ask me that question, and I was trying to think about how to answer it. And the truth of the matter is, like, I don't think I assess them the way that most people do. Like, for me, soundtracks are a tool, a lot of them, because a big part of my job is something called temping. Generally, the composer comes into the project after the picture has been locked. So the picture editor is taking all of the what we call the dailies, the raw footage, and putting together essentially the entire film before the composer even sees it, usually. And you can't watch a movie without music. It's unwatchable. You can't watch a scene without music. So there is a process before the composer ever shows up called temp scoring or temping. Mm-hmm. And what that essentially is using film scores from other projects or songs or whatever music that already exists to make a fake score for your movie, so that you can get into sense of emotionally what the music will be doing when it's finally written. That's a big part of a music editor's job. And I think what a lot of people don't know is that a lot of the sound of a film, a lot of times the composer comes in and creates something new and creates something, wonderful that nobody's heard or seen before. But about half the time, the composer's job is, hey, the music editor already figured this out. Like, can you write us original music that does exactly what the music editor's temp was doing? And, in that case, I have, hundreds and hundreds of film scores on my hard drive that I use for that process. So, like, I'll lay on a score and I'll love it because it's working for me. And it's like, and it's in my head and I'm using it on this particular project. And, the TV score from this TV show is now our temp score for this TV show. And, the score from this movie, I used these 3 movies to make up the sound of this new movie. So those 3 film scores are running through my head for weeks. And then years will go by and I haven't heard them because I didn't need them, And so for me, when I think about like my favorite film scores, they are ones that have affected me personally in my career rather than ones that like speak to me emotionally, because I'm forced to listen to so many different scores under so many different circumstances that I haven't like formed a bond with that film score that like I pop in all the time. Like I don't have that in my life. And I know that that's weird because I used to, like, you know, that's how I ended up in this industry. But that kind of relationship with film scores, it changed for me because like I have to listen to the score from this obscure movie and get it in my bones because I'm using it this month, you know? And so I'm constantly switching. But if you forced me to pick, I'm going to pick one that makes no sense to anybody. Or maybe, I mean, if you heard it, it might. It's actually a brilliant score also. I'm going to pick the sequel to I Know What You Did Last Summer, the original I Still Know What You Did Last Summer.
Bonjour, compadre. It's the
Priceline Negotiator.
How do I negotiate so many great travel deals? My greatest gadget, the Priceline app. It's got hotel deals, flight deals, rental car deals, all of those deals in a bundle. Deals, game day deals, concert trip deals. No one deals more deals than Priceline. Hold your horses, there's more. The app lets you filter hotels by neighborhood, vibe, star level, and amenities like pools and spas and beachfronts and... Wait, I'm not done. Stop cutting me off.
Priceline.
Okay.
And I'm going to pick that score for a totally random reason. It was scored by John Frizell, who at the time I was his assistant. And, you know, one of the jokes that I always say is Digital Audio and I arrived in Hollywood on the same flight. And the reason I have a career is because I showed up at a time where everything was tape and analog. And, you know, I moved to Hollywood in 1995. And all of a sudden, all these digital tools, these computers and samplers and all of these digital tools were showing up. And if you wanted to compete in the marketplace, you had to use these digital tools. They were faster, they were cleaner, but nobody really knew how to. And here I come with a degree in audio engineering, a degree in music, a lifelong computer nerd. And I look at these computer tools and I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah. Oh, look what you can do. Oh, look what you can do. And all of these composers who needed someone to like, you know, I had, you know, in my first year here, I'm working with these legendary recording engineers who didn't know how to press record because all of a sudden we're on new machines and that work totally differently. And so I feel like the reason I have a career is because I just happened to show up at exactly the right moment where that particular set of skills was suddenly incredibly needed in Hollywood and nobody had them. And now, you know, everybody knows how to use Pro Tools. Everybody knows how to use digital audio workstations. I mean, you know, kids in high school are using them. And the skills that made me special in 1995 are sort of average skills now, but I've got 30 years of doing it now. So now I'm really good at it and I have experience. And now I can, you know, justify my career based on my experience. But in the beginning, there was no reason why I got jobs other than I happened to be good at these tools. And so I feel like I was part of a class of people. There were a few of us who dragged Hollywood into the digital age and who like sort of forced this to happen. And there's a legendary scoring stage on the Sony lot. It's where John Williams records all of his scores. And they were on 2-inch recording tape. And on that film score, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, we were using all these digital tools in John's studio. And it was my job as his assistant to prep those recording sessions to make sure that we had all of the materials there, all of the music was there, all of the, you know, there's something called pre-records, which are the already recorded tracks that the orchestra is playing along to. And I have to make sure all the pre-records are there and they're all in time. And there's a bunch of technical requirements. And I'm doing all of them on the computer. And all I have to do on the computer is make tracks for the orchestra and I'm ready to go. But they're going to make me like record it to tape and then bounce it in and line it up and all of these things that like just seem to me to be a waste of time and extra steps. And not to mention the fact that like when you press play on the tape, on the back then you'd press play on the movie and then all of the tape machines would rewind and scroll and catch themselves up based on the time code of the movie. And so between the time you pressed play and the time you could actually press record was like 15, 20 seconds. So you finish a take, you rewind all the machines, you press play, you wait 15 or 20 seconds, you're all locked, you've got tape lock. In the old time, they used to say, you know, speed, action. What speed meant was all of our machines are up to speed now, and then you could hit record. But I don't need that on the computer. I just hit record again. And so I could save a lot of time on this mix on the recording stage too, which is incredibly expensive, if you can imagine, with, you know, 80 musicians and, you know, big scoring stage. And it's every minute there costs thousands and thousands of dollars. So I basically said to John, like, we don't need to do tape. Like, let's do this to hard drive. Let's go for it. And the scoring stage pushed back. They were like, we are not confident in those machines. They are not stable. They are not, we can't, what happens if your computer crashes in the middle, which was a very common occurrence back then. What happens if your computer crashes in the middle? Like, we're not confident. So we're going to run the 2-inch tape in the background. They're like, you can bring in your, racks of computer equipment. Back then I was rolling in a giant rack of computer equipment, on this big rack that fit in the back of my car. And they're like, you can bring in your computer equipment and you can record it to computer, but we're going to run the 2-inch tape in the background. And I said to them, that's fine, but I'm not going to wait for you. And they were like, okay. They didn't really know what that meant. And so we said to the musicians, it's the first minute of the recording session, welcome everyone. We're doing, this is this movie we're doing. This is what what's going to happen today. And by the way, we're recording this score for the first time ever, the first score ever recorded on that, legendary scoring stage, to hard drive. And so there's not going to be as much time as you expect in between the takes. So don't put your instruments down, because the violin players would finish the take and then they put them down in their lap and they wait while they rewind and they wait. It's a minute, 2 minutes. They're not going to sit there like this for 2 minutes. So they wait. So we press play on, record on the first take. We do the take. We get to the end and we say, okay, let's do another one. Ready? Here we go. In 5. And they're all like, wait, what? They'd all put their instruments down. They were like, what's happening? And that day we recorded, which was about 15 minutes of music, which nowadays is a good day of recording. You can do better, but that's a good day of recording. But back then was, I think they said 8 minutes more than they'd ever seen anyone do in a single day ever. And now if I went into that very same scoring stage and say, hey, I'd like to record this to 2-inch tape, they'd be like, what? We don't have this. What are you talking about? Like, those machines don't even exist in the marketplace anymore. Yeah. Where are you even going to get tape? Like, you have to buy it from vintage tape manufacturers, That score was the first score on Eastman Scoring Stage recorded to hard drive, the way that now is the standard. And there is such like a feeling for me of nostalgia and pride in that experience that score will hold a special place in my heart forever.
That's awesome. I love hearing stories like that. Do you have any other fun stories, good or bad, about your job? That you could share with us?
Oh yeah, I got like 30 years of them. I will tell you, along the same vein, that we're in an inflection moment again, technologically, just like we were in the 90s, which is the advent of AI. And AI is moving in to all of our workflows in a way that computers did back then. And I have exactly the same feelings that I did 30 years ago. The difference is like, I was 22 back then. And like, but I have exactly the same feelings that I did then of like, okay, here's a new tech. How are we going to make our jobs? How are we going to use it to make us better at what we do? Like, how are we going to overcome whatever pitfalls come with this new tech so that on the other side of our new workflows, we are happier than we were before? Because I think that's everybody's kind of fear with AI now is I'm going to be less happy once this all shakes out and all the new AI-based workflows are in everybody's jobs, Hollywood or not. Everyone is sort of feeling that sort of fear that my life will be worse on the other side of this transition than it was before. And I was very much involved in this exact kind of technical transition. And I remember everyone feeling the same emotions, and I remember sitting with legendary recording engineers saying to me, I'm a dinosaur. I'm done. Like, my career's over. I don't know how to use any of this equipment. Like, I'm done. None of their careers were over, in the end. In the end, like, their ears were what got them their jobs, not the gear in front of them, As I say to my kids often, it's not just the tool, it's the hands on the tool that matter. I'm starting to integrate AI pretty heavily into my workflow now. Not to create music, because I don't think that makes me or the audience or anybody happier, but to manage a lot of the technical processes that happen. Like, I'll give you a classic example. There's a process, once we record the final version of the music, we have new recordings. So I've built the whole show from demo recordings, from old recordings, from from pieces of cues we've put together, and we have a version of the movie, but now we're going to go to our recording session and re-record it, and now it's a whole new version. It's the same music, it's just new files. And not only that, when you get a piece of music on the radio or on the internet, it's stereo, which means there's two channels, your left and your right ear, right? And when I get music from a composer, and if I'm lucky, I can get these same things on songs, I get what we call stems. So it's not 2 tracks, it can be, 30 tracks. It's stereo drums, stereo piano, stereo guitar, stereo, all the pieces broken out. If I put all those tracks up and hit play, it sounds exactly like that stereo thing you'd hear. It is the stereo mix, the left and right ear, but I can peel it apart. I can say, let's take the drums out here. Let's make the guitars louder here. Let's double up. Let's take the drums from here and use them. I can peel the music apart. And so I now have 60 files for every cue, a left and right channel for all of these things, and they all have to be rebuilt in Pro Tools, put back in their correct place, remake the movie. That's a technical process that doesn't require you don't even have to listen. You do have to, after you've built it, you got to go in and check it and work it and make it good. But like the building of it process is a few hours of work that now I have done by AI, because it's all by the numbers. So I don't waste my time on those kinds of processes now. I have AI who does those processes for me. And so I think along the lines of why that I Still Know What You Did Last Summer score is special to me, I wonder in a few years if I'll look back and be like, oh yeah, Avatar, The Last Airbender was the very first episode that I had assembled. I call that process assembly by AI. And now AI does all these other things for me. And maybe this show will now hold a special place for me because it was a part of me pulling Hollywood into the AI era, which I'm hoping to do now in a way that is, both ethical and beneficial for everyone, for musicians, for composers, for music editors, for filmmakers. I think that there's a lot of tools that can help us rather than hurt us. And I'm hoping to sort of do the same thing, steer the bus towards a positive outcome rather than one that makes everybody's lives less happy.
I like that. Finally, a level-headed approach to AI.
Try to be level-headed. It's not easy in this town, but try to be.
Yeah, I mean, I've run a lot of the audio tracks for the podcast through like an AI filter to try to clean stuff up. Obviously you have to go back and listen to it. It's not perfect, but it does save some time.
Yeah, I mean, what I often say is like, figure AI is going to give you like a 50% on it, like a very good average answer to every question you ask. And so in most topics, I am nowhere near average. I'm below average on almost everything, right? So when I employ the AI in those places, it makes me smarter. But there are places where I'm above average. We all have those things we're good at. And so when I employ the AI in those places, it makes me stupider. So I am trying my best to use it in a way that only makes me smarter, and know where to employ it and where not to employ it, and where to push back on the answers that AI is giving me and say like, no, actually, I know better than you in this particular realm, and we can do this in a better way. And it's back to the same thing of whose hands are on the tool. AI is just a tool. So that's sort of the approach I'm trying to take. But it's not easy because it can give you some pretty smart answers on things where you're just like, oh, good enough. But,
Right.
good enough is not good enough in Hollywood. Like,
Yeah.
There's 100 people coming for your job at every moment, and they're all really talented. And so you really have to keep your standards at 100% all the time.
That's a good standard to live by, I think. So Micah, do you have any projects coming up that you can talk about?
Yeah, we're actually working on quite a few projects right now. A lot of stuff is coming back. Obviously we have, as I mentioned, Coven Academy is a new one that's coming out. I'm actually really excited about. I'm not the target audience for the show. And it's always funny as like, an old man working on a show that's made for, essentially teenagers, like having to align my taste with what they're going to like. But on this show, it wasn't that hard because I actually really like it. It's fun. It's, the story is, I really like it. So Coven Academy is one that's coming out soon. Obviously, season 2 of Avatar: The Last Airbender and season 3. Like we've not finished season 2, as I said, but we've already rolled into season 3. They shot both of them together, and it's, as I said, it takes us a year or some odd to finish a season. So season 2 will be coming out I'm not sure when, end of the summer, beginning of next year, and we're already deep into season. We're gonna just roll right into working on season 3. So I'm excited about that. And then a lot of other returning shows. The season 8 of Virgin River is coming out, is about to start shooting. That's the longest running show on Netflix, original show on Netflix, Virgin River.
Oh, very cool.
So we have season 8 of that coming back. We have what are we up to? 6, When Only Murders in the Building is coming back. We just wrapped up season 2 of Running Point.
Oh, my wife loves that show.
Yeah. At season, we came in to take over on season 2, and that has been really a blast. That show's also really just nothing but fun. So that was a really fun experience. We got a lot of stuff in the works coming up shortly. So, and a lot of returning shows, which that is really the most exciting thing, like the number of times that I'll make a show and love it and not get to do season 2. That's like the most heartbreaking thing.
Okay, quick break. I have to share a song that I've been listening to lately. It's called Calling All Angels by Mero. It's a really emotional kind of haunting track, but in a really subtle, beautiful way. It actually came out of a difficult time in their life, and you can feel that throughout the song. It has that feeling of reaching out or searching for something and not really knowing if anyone's listening. The sound is super immersive too, almost cinematic, but really stripped back, which I love. Mero is just one of those artists where the voice and writing feel really raw and original, and it's cool to see it already getting attention from places like Flaunt, V Magazine, and Grammy.com. Also, co-signed from Bob Boilen of NPR. If you're into more emotional, low-key music, I think you'll really like this one. I'll link it in the show notes so you can listen. You can stream Calling All Angels by Mero on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you listen to music.
There are sort of 2 things behind the scene that make it good to work on a TV show. One is, are you proud of the material? Like, do you think this is a show that you would recommend to people, like, to make? And the other is, what was the experience like? Like, were the people nice? Was the workflow, did they give you enough time? Was there enough money in the budget to get things done properly? Like, what was the experience like working on the show? The audience doesn't get to experience the second one. Right. Just the first one. And I've done shows where, like, there's a complete mismatch in opposite directions. We all know we're making a piece of trash TV, but we are loving doing it, right? And this piece of art that we toiled over was agonizing, and I hated every second of it. But man, is the outcome brilliant. I've been in both of those situations. The best shows are the ones where I loved making it, and oh my God, am I proud of the material? Am I proud of the outcome? Those are few and far between, to be brutally honest. And, when you're a kid, they send you off to arts and crafts, but they never tell you the difference. And you grow up thinking, oh, I'm going to be an artist. I'm an artist. I'm working as an artist. And then you realize that 99% of your time you're just doing crafts. And there's nothing wrong with being a master craftsman. It's quite the opposite. That is a very fulfilling thing. But it's not the same as being an artist. And I don't often get the opportunity to actually make art. Not everything is art. And a lot of this is crafts. A lot of this is formula. And the ones where I get to feel like I'm contributing artistically to a piece of art that I am proud of, and the process is great and the people are great, those, like, only a few of those in my career. And they all, those to me are the absolute highlights. And right now, Avatar: The Last Airbender falls into that category for sure. We are making something new that's never been made before in a genre that barely exists, a new approach to an existing story, like a retelling of the same tale. So having to, like, turn our artistry up, like, we can't rehash what's already been done, or it's just going to be a bad version of the cartoon. And we've all seen those, Avatar has one of those. We don't talk about it. But,
right. That's why I make sure to say it's Netflix's Avatar that you're working on.
We call that the movie that shall not be mentioned.
Correct.
There is a live action feature film of Avatar, and that's a perfect example of what happens when you try to make art and you end up making crafts. We are, as the crew on Avatar, are painfully aware, because we are in a universe where we knew the audience had that in their head already before we even started the project, that, oh, the live action version of this can go really wrong. And so uh, we were forced to really turn our art heads up to 11. And, I'm working with a new composer. I mean, I say new composer, but now we've been doing this project together for years. But I had never met Takeshi. Takeshi Furukawa is our composer on Avatar: The Last Airbender. He comes from the video game world, and he's a very renowned video game composer, and I've never even worked on a video game. And when they made Mythic Quest, which is a TV show about a crew, the Mythic Quest production was like, wouldn't it be fun to get a video game composer to score this show? So they got Takeshi to do it, and turns out he's a genius. And I use that word a lot. I throw that word around a lot. But there's different kinds of musicians and different kinds of composers who land in Hollywood from all kinds of different paths. As I said, everybody's different. And you get the Trent Reznors, like the guy who is a rock, god who brings that, alternative rock approach. You get Danny Elfman, right? This guy who is a creative genius who uses the orchestra in a way that nobody ever used it before. He's taking his pop sensibilities and he's applying them to the orchestra and using the orchestra in, like a pop star would. And the overwhelming majority of composers in Hollywood now are that. They are people who came up from, they learned composition through non-orchestral approaches, and then they're using the orchestra as a tool to make film music that doesn't sound like traditional orchestral film scoring the way, say, John Williams scores films, using the orchestra like an orchestral master. And Takeshi is that. He is like a John Williams of today. His music was written for the orchestra in a way that shows an understanding of orchestra that is beyond what you'd expect from a film composer. And doing Avatar with him has been an absolute pleasure. And I've on the scoring stage, I'm sitting there with a master score. So I have a piece of printed music that has all the instruments on it. And I'm following along, making sure that we're getting what we need and marking, the clarinet was flat in bar 23 and that, making my notes on this, piece of score. And for me, my work brain is on when I'm in that process. But with this score, I can't help, my music student brain keeps turning on and I keep learning things from him about orchestration, about melody, about harmonies, things that my student brain doesn't get turned on very much in when I'm at work now. But with Takeshi, he's really truly a master of the orchestra in a way that is a pleasure to see coming up in my own generation. I mean, he's 10 years younger than me, but in the next generation, it's really the post John Williams era, let's call it. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with him on this. So,
oh, very cool. Yeah, I think I've watched all of Mythic Quest, and I do remember his score being very memorable. I was like, this is almost too good for this show.
Yeah, it's the music stands on its own in a way that film scores almost aren't supposed to.
Yeah.
When one of the things, I know you guys are really focused on songs, on soundtracks, on pre-existing songs, and one of the things that makes, for me as a music editor, one of the fundamental differences when I'm putting a song in a scene versus when I'm putting score in a scene is that score was written as part of a collaborative process. This score was never intended to be a standalone work of art. It was intended to enhance a bigger piece of art, to be a piece of it. And people listening to film scores as standalone pieces of art is almost like the same as people appreciating the buttons and not looking at the shirt.
Right.
Those beautiful buttons were made to fit into that shirt, and you're missing a piece of what the composer was thinking when you're just listening to the music. So, but for a song, it's the opposite. As a songwriter, I want 100% of your attention. I'm creating a piece of art that's designed to take you, I want your whole brain involved in listening to this piece of music right now, and only this piece of music, and thinking about the lyrics and the melody and the things that I want you to think about. And so now, as a music editor, I have to take this Lady Gaga song, which demands 100% of your attention, and put it underneath a scene that requires you to be thinking about something else as an audience member. And that is a very different approach for me as a music editor, because those songs are so good. I don't want to listen. I want to take my mind out of the story and pay attention to Adele or pay attention to Dua Lipa or whoever I'm putting in here now. But I can't let you do that. Your brain has to stay in the narrative of the story. You have to stay with my characters and not, what we call knock you out of the movie. Like, there can't be a moment where you stop paying attention to the story. And that makes soundtrack editing particularly complicated. And, that's why I love it when I can get stems on a song. If I can get the vocals and the instruments split out on a song when they deliver it to me to put in the movie, and I can take the lyrics out and just use the track and then bring the lyrics back in when they're not talking over my actors, like, that's a huge advantage for me, And like, here comes lyrics that are in the way when they're talking, but as soon as they finish talking, now I want to bring up the lyric that punches you in the gut. So how do I balance the audience's attention is a big part of what we're doing. And, you said that the composer had mentioned the music editor setting things at exactly the right volume. If I'm sending if my composer has just spent a week writing a 3-minute action cue, and I've got to get this approved by the the filmmakers have to watch this and love it. If it's a tiny bit too quiet, it's just not really hitting the action hard enough. And if it's a tiny bit too loud, it's taking me out of the action, and I'm paying more attention to the music than I should. So a well-written piece of music can get thrown in the garbage because it wasn't mixed properly. And a poorly written piece of music can make it through all the gatekeepers because it's been manipulated just enough that it never knocks you out. It never bothers you. It's working great. And so that process of being told, oh, we're trying to decide between these 4 songs in this scene. Can you cut them all in and let us see? I have to try to make each song tell the right emotional story. When you're a filmmaker, we're all doing the same thing. Everybody in every department, whether it's the lighting guy or the costumer or me, or everyone's doing the same thing. We're trying to tell one story. We're all on a narrative, and we want the audience to stay in the story, and we're all trying to just ultimately in the end use whatever craft we have to be storytellers. My job is not the words of not the dialogue. It's not the plot. It's not the locations. It's not any of the things that are physically on the screen. My job is the emotional journey. I need the audience to feel this way until she says this. Then I want them to feel this. And I want them to feel that maybe you trust that character and maybe you don't. But then when this happens, now we have to fully trust her. And like, I have one of those few jobs. Actually, Mike Judge said this to me when we were making Office Space. He said, I know you did an episode on Office Space.
We did
a few episodes ago. When we were doing the score for Office Space, Mike Judge said, he just turned to me randomly and he said, we have one of the few jobs where grown men sit around in rooms and talk about the way things make them feel.
That's awesome. It's true though.
Because that is my only job, to tell the emotional story. And that's easy to do, or not easy to do, but let's say easier to do with music that was written by someone who was on the same journey, who was saying right here, the audience needs to feel here, and right here, the audience needs to feel that, and right here, the audience needs to feel that. And now I've got this piece of music that's doing what it's supposed to be doing because the composer was doing exactly that. As opposed to a song where the emotional journey that the songwriter is taking you on is a different one than the one that the filmmakers are taking you on. And now I have to use this other journey and fit it in to tell the emotional story of your film or TV show with a completely other completed, finished, already done work of art. And that is much more challenging as a music editor often than the score is.
Yeah, I can see that.
So, yeah, it's part of the reason why I like using songs, and also part of the reason why I don't like using it. It's like sometimes it's like, oh man, I just, no one got me this emotion better than this song, so let's just throw that song in and we'll feel the right emotion. And you throw the song in and you're like, yep, done. And sometimes you're like, it's feeling good, except she's singing when they're talking and it makes it hard for me to understand the words. Or sometimes it's like, oh man, the song is working great, but like it just ends wrong. Now
Right.
what?
Yeah.
And it's like, a lot of what I do is manufacture endings. Say like, I can end this song differently than the way that the song actually ends, by like manipulating this and putting this drum hit over here and adding a reverb tail over there, and like trying to make the song the song that ended with finality end with ambiguity, or whatever the emotional problem is with the way the song ends and the emotion I'm going for. Like that's a big part of it, is like manufacturing endings and manufacturing transitions and trying to get songs to do jobs that they weren't meant to do.
Right.
As opposed to score, where if the score's not doing what it meant to do, I pick up the phone and I say, hey, Takeshi, can we make this feel more like that? And he goes, okay, and he rewrites it, although that's usually not coming from me. That's coming from executive producers or whoever. But, that is the I think sort of the unique thing about working with songs versus scores.
Oh, that's great insight. Thank you so much for that. So I don't want to keep you too much longer, Micah. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was really a pleasure. I really enjoy listening to your podcast too. So
Thank you. Learned a lot. And I mean that in the best ways. I would keep going, but I want to be courteous of your time. But if people want to follow what you're up to, what is the best way for them to follow you?
You can check out my website, MichaLiberman.com. Also, I just to bring it full circle about that musical journey, put out my first solo album a few months ago. Under I use my middle name on that. It's Micha Meir, Michameir, available on all of your streaming services. You can check out my album and check out my shows. Watch the TV shows, enjoy them, love them. That's how we get the opportunity to make more of them.
Yeah, we'll have links in our show notes to Micah's website, as well as where you can stream his album as well. But yeah, thank you so much, Micha. I can't wait for more of your projects to come out. Like I said, I watched that episode of Only Murders this morning, and I was just blown away with how many. I felt like you're just spinning a bunch of plates all at once.
That is true. Since you just watched that episode, I'm going to tell you my secret favorite part of that episode, or one of my favorite parts that nobody will ever notice unless I tell you. There is a moment, when Steve Martin is doing that performance, there's a live band in the pit orchestra there that's playing. He's singing along to a live band. I mean, not really, but like on TV, he's singing along to a live band. Mm-hmm. And when we cut into that theater, there is a shot where the camera pans across the band, and you can see they're all practicing and getting ready. They're all just like doing what the musicians do. And before a show starts, they're all just like warming up and playing their own things, whatever. And they put in a sound effect of a band warming up. And it was fine. It worked. Nobody said anything about it. But because I was working on that song for so long and playing that scene so many times and hearing that sound effect go by 1,000 times, every time it went by, I was like, oh man, I can hear that the harp player is not playing what I'm seeing. And I can, I'm hearing instruments in my ear that I'm not seeing in the pit. And like, just these kinds of things that you would never notice as it pans across for 3 seconds. And then I did something insane that nobody asked me to do because I couldn't help myself. I went to the actual recordings of our actual band that we had in New York, because Pasek and Paul's team hired like a real Broadway band and recorded all of those tracks in New York with an actual Broadway pit orchestra. And I had all of those raw recordings. And of course, in between takes, at the beginning of the recordings, while people are talking, all of the musicians at some point were practicing, were doing their things, whatever. And I snipped them all out And I made like a little library for myself of here's the harp player practicing, here's the horn players practicing, here's the drummer practicing. And then I watched that shot and I lined up everybody's hands with some note. So first I watched the harp player, then I watched the drummer, then I watched and I made sure, and you know, if you go to one of those things, they're playing little pieces from the upcoming score. They're like practicing the hard parts. So I went in and found like, what's the hard parts for the horns? Okay, let me put that in when you see them playing. And then I did them one at a time. I opened up all the tracks. You know, I knew it was going to be chaos, but I opened up all the tracks and I watched it for the first time, panning across where every musician was actually playing something that made sense. And it looked so real and so good. And I was just like, I'm putting this in the show. I'm not even telling anybody. I'm not asking anybody's opinion. This is going in. And, you know, that little moment in that episode that you watch today that there is no way anybody notices but me makes me smile every time.
I love that story. I love that detail. And that is why you are one of the best in the business.
Well, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Micah. It was a pleasure. This, I think, will be out at the end of May. I will let your publicist know. But
awesome.
This was awesome. Hopefully we'll do this again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Did you know if your windows are bare, indoor temperatures can go up 20 degrees? Turn the temperature down with Blinds.com and get up to 50% off custom window treatments like solar roller shades and more during the Memorial Day mega sale. Whether you want to DIY it or have a pro handle everything, we've got you. Free samples, real design experts, and zero pressure. Just help when you need it. Shop up to 50% off site-wide and huge savings on doorbusters right now during the Memorial Day mega sale at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions apply.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.